Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. How are you all today? My name is Micah and today I will be talking to you about 10 recent eyeshadow palettes that I've tried, and I'm sort of giving you my mini reviews of each one of them. So in the past couple of months, I've definitely acquired some new eyeshadow palettes again. They may not be new to the market, as in they're not the newest of the new palettes. There are definitely a few that launched in the past couple of months, but some of these are also older palettes that are then new to me. So that's what I mean by recent. They're just my new in. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on 10 of them that I've given enough of a chance to have some thoughts on. So I would like to start with the first palette, which is what I have on my eyes today. And this is probably the most boring look I could have shown you. With this palette, because what I'm wearing on my eyes today is this Certifeye Tropical Wonders palette. Now, if you know a little bit about my channel, then you know that I was really looking to try more indie brands in 2019, and at the end of 2018, Certifeye had a sale, so I was able to get this at a discount, which pretty much meant free shipping. So that was really nice, and this is what the palette looks like, and then you instantly know why I say that this was probably the most boring look I could have done with this palette. Because this is a very fun rainbow palette. They're all matte, they're quite powdery, but they're pretty easy to work with. And I like the layout of this palette a lot because you have your, more so your warm tones in the top half, and then you get your cooler tones in the bottom half. So you can just sort of stick to one area of the palette, and that way you will get a cohesive look. I've used it a couple of times now, and I do have to say that I really like it. The formula does mean because it's quite powdery, it's very soft. You do have to pack it on in order to get the sort of intensity you see in the actual pan. I feel that with a blending brush, if the blush is a little bit, or with a blending brush, so with a fluffier brush, I feel that it shears out quite a bit, and on my very light complexion, it just means that the color shears out a bit. So that, for instance, means that this green didn't really show up that green straight away. It's definitely something you need to build up, or just make sure you grab a flat packer brush and use it to pack on the shades. I think that works best. It is a palette, because it is white, it becomes quite messy. Let me show you up close. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but sometimes when the color gets onto the packaging, you can't clean it up anymore. So that's a bit of an inconvenience, because even if you try rubbing it off, it only makes a smudge and you can't really clean it very well. So I've even tried makeup wipes, so that also doesn't really work. So it's a very stunning palette, definitely something to get a little bit creative with. Nothing crazy and boring like I'm wearing today, of course, because I want to film more videos, and I just wanted to make sure that I could do more with this look than just talking about some eyeshadow palettes today. So that's why it's quite basic. But the shades I'm wearing, I'm pretty sure you'd like to know that too, are these top two. So Dusk, Shrimp, and Toucan, which Toucan has to be one of my favorite shades in the palette because it's just so unique and definitely something I don't have. It's not necessarily an orange, but it's definitely sort of like between an orange and a yellow, so I quite like that shade. Then an oldie that I hadn't tried yet, and that of course got a lot of slack, is the ABH Subculture. Now, I found all of the ABH palettes on sale for Black Friday at the end of 2018, so I definitely wanted to make this palette my priority, because I've also heard that they're discontinuing these. So I know that in the States you can now find this at TJ Maxx. I ended up buying mine still from a regular store. I don't really see these disappearing yet where I live here in the Netherlands, so maybe you can still get your hands on it. And again, I've used this a few times and I was so happy with every single look that came out of it. This has a very similar super powdery formula like the Certifeye. So this is, again, one of those formulas that is best if you just pack it on and then blend it, rather than going in with a very fluffy brush straight away. The only shade that gave me a bit of problems was Axis here, which is a very nice teal. I found that once it was on and you started blending it and it got into a spot where you didn't really want it to go. You couldn't really like wipe it away. It sort of like grabbed on, and that's it. So this is a shade I feel you have to be very careful with, but everything else in this palette I thought was stunning. I mean, there's a reason why I still wanted to get this, and that's the color scheme in this palette. The color story of this is entirely up my alley, and that's why I wanted to get it. And I do have to say that definitely with a light hand, this formula is just as easy to work with as a Modern Renaissance. The shades are a little bit darker, so that does mean that mistakes are a little bit more easy to see, easier to spot, and because of this very sort of like fall, murky, like everything is very brown tone, so you have to be very careful that it doesn't muddy up on you. However, with my brown eyes, this is such a great palette. It really works well with my complexion. I also have something a little bit more affordable in here. I have the Milani Soft and Sultry, Let Me Not Blind You. I got this because everybody was saying it's such a great cool tone palette, and I'm actually working on some cool toned eyeshadow palettes that I would like to do a video with as like a cool toned eyeshadow palette 2.0 version. I already have a version 1, which I can link in the eye above if you're interested. But I definitely want to do an updated version to that because there are just many more cool toned eyeshadows out there right now. I use this. I'm mainly focused on using the different quads to see how that would work to make looks with. And I do have to say, I really like this. The formula of this is absolutely stunning for drugstore. Of course, this is a little bit more expensive. This retails for about 25 euros, which for drugstore is definitely up there in price. But you do get some really nice shades. I do have to say that in terms of cool tones, it's not super cool toned. That's something that I do have to say. I feel that only this like middle row is the cool toned one, and the rest, it looks a little bit cool toned in the pan, but I find that with some cool toned shadows that it's definitely cooler than a warm brown, but it still translates quite warm on me. So on my complexion, this pulls a little bit more warm toned than I would like. An indie brand I also wanted to try was Michel Lu Cosmetics. This is another British indie brand, and this is their Witchcraft palette. And definitely people were asking me like, hey, can you do an update with your thoughts on this once you've used it? And that's why I decided to put it in this video. This was such an out there palette for me when I first looked at it, but once I started making looks with it, I figured out how wearable this is. It's a lot of greens, you get some purples and like some cranberry, like reddish tone browns, and those are the kind of browns that really go well with all of the greens in this palette too. So I feel that it works really well together. It's a very cohesive palette. The color story in this is definitely one of the more unique ones on the market. And this shade right here, what's it called? It's called Magic. It's absolutely stunning. Stunning. I definitely went with like a green look and like a purpley look and like a brown look when I tried this out. But so far, like looking at this palette, I already know, oh, I could do this, I could do that. Like this is just a palette that really inspires me. So Eva came out with some new palettes as well. I know not everybody talks about these, but I got this. I made my Zoeva palette collection video, which again, I will link in the eye above. And then they came out with this, or then I saw they had come out with this. So I was like, oh, I should have waited. This is the Eclectic Eyes palette, and it's sort of like electricity inspired, you could say. I believe this is a Sephora exclusive, or was limited edition to Sephora, but you can get it from the official Zoeva website as well. Whoops, I'm dropping things. And this is what that palette looks like. And you might think, electricity inspired. You see all these purples and blues in the packaging. It's not as vibrant perhaps, but you definitely, like you get a couple of neutrals here at the bottom. But this corner over here, these 5 shades are so stunning. And this is actually a little bit more of a duochrome. This like matte blue grayish tone is a bit, but these two, these are insane. When you swatch these, they just like glide on like butter. I'm not sure what they did there, but those are some amazing shades. And this shade right here in the bottom, Recoded Luxe, it looks like a teal with blue shimmer, but you mainly just get the dark teal and not much of the shimmer because it's too glittery. Also in the Black Friday sales, even though it wasn't on sale, I bought the some of these like little Huda Beauty palettes. The one that I've played around with the most is the Amethyst Obsessions palette, because this is purples and I love me some purples. And this is a very cohesive, well done purple palette. Like, purples can be so difficult to do, but these are some really nice purples. I do have to say that these two shades in the corner, those could have been a little bit different. Like, on my eyes, they just look identical. So that's a bit of a So I would have liked there to be like more of like a matte royal purple, because you do get that in a shimmer, but I would have liked to seeing that in more of a matte too. But other than that, you get some really nice duochromes. The shimmers in here are absolutely stunning. So that's the Huda Beauty. One of the newer palettes is the Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. I already told you in one of my palette videos that I was definitely going to get this. I didn't get it up on like release day. I wanted to, but then I was like, I might want to wait because I'm about to go to London and I know I want to shop there. So I just wanted to save my money for like a later time. So I got it like a month later, I think. So this is what the palette looks like. I'm sure you've seen it. I haven't put it next to my Sultry palette yet by Anastasia, which I also really like. I could have put that in this video. But I think that this is definitely more warm toned than the Sultry from what I can tell, how it works on my complexion. What I feel with this palette is that these shades, when you look at them in the palette, they look quite cool toned, especially compared to everything else that's in here. But on me, they look quite warm toned actually. And I feel that these two shimmers, as with every single Urban Decay release in the past couple of years, Naked Heat has it, Naked Cherry has it, and that what I mean by that is two shimmers, two mid-tone shimmers that are pretty much identical. So that's a bit of a shame. What I love about this is how tiny this is. This is quite small. It's a lot less bulky than the other Naked palettes, so I like that. I don't like the fabric. I just think it looks a bit cheap. But I do really like the layout of like going like darkest in the middle and then those lighter shades here, that these pans are a little bit bigger. I think it's a very cleverly laid out palette and I found it very easy to use. Let's have a look at a perfect palette for this season, which is the Nob La Soul Blooming eyeshadow palette. I cannot think of a more springtime, perfect for springtime palette than this. This is absolutely gorgeous. I do have to say that some of these shimmers in here are a little bit thin, so they're not the best. They definitely need a lot of layering, foiling, putting them on with your finger to get them to work. But the mattes in here are really stunning, and I love how this is a little bit more cool toned. We do get these like peaches to warm it up just a little bit. I also bought some new Deets Place palettes, and I'm definitely still sort of making my way through them. The one that I've used the most is the Saharan 2. And I knew I was going to love this. I love Deets Place eyeshadow quality. Who doesn't? But this color scheme, like this color story, really sort of intrigued me because it's very warm. You've got two rows of shimmers, and then you get a full row of mattes at the bottom. And this, I'm not sure if you can see that, but this has a duochrome to it too. So it's got some really, really stunning shades. Love it. Huge pans. And I was just taken aback by how well these two like bluish, greenish shades go with the warmth in the rest of the palette. It's something that you probably don't expect, but it's just something that works really well. You can keep it very neutral and bronzy, or go a little bit more smoky with the cranberry shade. But if you want that bright pop of something on the lower lash line, this shade is absolutely stunning. This makes for a great inner corner or all over the lid shade. But my favorite shade in the palette has to be this. This shade, what's it called? There's a bit of shadow that's covering it. This is Zora. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I've heard people raving about it being like a really, really great like burgundy, like matte burgundy shade. It is. It's all the stories are true. And then last but not least, a cult favorite that I hadn't tried is the Dream Street palette from Colourpop and Kathleen Lights. And I do have to say that I looked at this quite a few times before I finally decided to bite the bullet. They had this like deal where they had free shipping, and that's when I decided to get this. I was like, okay, this will still keep me under the limit of, so that the free shipping actually makes sense. And this is such a nice palette. It's neutral, but you get teals, and I love teals. I just love those. So this is a color story that just really speaks to me. And I do have to say that, again, these two here in the corner, like, they're very similar, so I didn't really need those. And you do get a really nice transition shade. You get a darker matte brown. You get some pops of color. It really does have everything that you might want in an eyeshadow palette, and I really like the ColourPop formula, so double whammy right there. So those are 10 eyeshadow palettes that I tried in the past couple of months that I wanted to update you on. Let me know in a comment down below what the eyeshadow palette is that you last tried. I would be very curious to know. And if you would like to see more videos by me, then of course, by all means, stay tuned. Thumbs up this video. You know the drill. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!